let's rather, for me, let's
Sorry,
rather
how
get
does the
strong
test
in
get?
what we do. I will
How does
have
the-
them emailed to you. I will
Okay.
find out from Sylvia. As I said, there's nothing to catch you out. It's more to see if there was something that you didn't understand. And that's all that it's about. Because I expect our trainers to always want to be better than anybody else. It's a privilege to train and share knowledge. So it's a starting point, and I think it's probably a good starting point, same page. And as I said to you, without a whole long sermon, let's just make sure we're all as strong as we can be. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say. And it's getting emailed to you. So really, there shouldn't be any complications because the information is everywhere, to be honest with you. But collecting it is also a good thing. All right. So I think that is also a really good to start a foundation. The thing is, when you get to masters, you can't jump and not know your foundation, because I never go back to foundation after this. I don't, if you have explored something, it's your foundation. When you experience something, it's formulation and all the things that you stack on top. And by the time you get to masters, it should never go back to explore level, because what is the use of having masters if you're going to be teaching people what they learned in explore? I believe in like stacking. It's like building blocks. We grow, we grow, we grow, we grow. And the outcome is always very strong trainers. And I think that is the most positive thing I can say to you. Right. So bearing that in mind, please ask questions if you don't understand something. I don't like to hijack people at the end and go, oh, well, you didn't take notes, but I'm going to now make you write a test. That's not in my DNA. So I never try and catch you out. Just do what you need to do. And I would like you obviously all to excel. All right. So explore Technofruit. I had an experience level that does a lot of the chemistry, but what we've decided to do is keep all the chemistry parts rather for masters. And because at this level, people really don't really want the chemistry part. They want to know how the product works, and they want to know what the sexy stories are and how they are implemented. So as I said to you yesterday, in your Explore Technofruit color folder, you have the booster, you have all the new utilities that have just been introduced. You also have, I told you, the cheat sheet and the graphics for the color wheel, and basically everything is in this one folder. I didn't want to add utilities into Explore Technofruit, because maybe that's not where you're going for that training. I didn't put Boosty in here because maybe that's, you don't have time to touch on all of that, but I wanted it to be available to you. And I think that is the best that we can do in those circumstances. I like building one file for one area, and then we build another file for, just to make it easy accessible wherever you are. So let's start. Okay. Our introduction, again, as you see, there is a standard format now. We will look at some environmental sustainability. And as yesterday, I asked you, please do not just pass our sustainability, because it's what our brand is busy building itself to be known for. Then we'll look at the benefits of using Technofruit. And I think Technofruit, for all of you who have been working with the color for a really long time, already knows the value of its ability to cover gray hair. Its ability and longevity, for me, is really, really good compared to a lot of other colors that I've tested it against. The technology is sound. The color wheel, for those that have trained with me before, will know it's on point, and it will really be a very good training tool. And I will talk a little bit about how I train with it, so that I can help you to sort of recreate the same kind of experience. Then there's the ingredients within Technofruit, mixing, and your application. I'm busy with actually for January. So I have everything's on a timeline that I have to complete because I want a proper consultation sheet where you do a proper analysis, and then all the trainings which you're going to see with me will have the same kind of head sheet with the same zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, so that our clients get used to always analyzing in the 3 different zone areas. So obviously the one will be your scalp and your first 2 centimeters, then the middle area, and then the ends. Because when we color, sometimes we have to actually consider that we're going to have to change formulation along the hair shaft. But let's give them a tool that makes it very easy for them to identify how to work with it. So that is my my other projects I'm busy with, because I like things to be user-friendly, and at the same time, make sure that our training coincides and matches a tool like that. And then everything sort of becomes streamlined, and everybody likes the fact that it's in a box, but we're not putting them in a box, if you know what I mean. All right. And then we going to, as I said, with the application, it's consistent now through all the education, the way the head looks and what is happening along the hair shaft. Do you like that kind of idea? So everything, that's not here, there, and everywhere. I like streamlined. All right, so today we're going to look at environmental sustainability and 100% renewable energy. Now, when we talk about renewable energy, we get it from the sun, wind, water, and the land. And you also can use, sorry, I forgot to switch this off. That's really bad of me. You also use low emission window glass and insulation and ventilation. Now, this is something very dear to my heart, and I love to give you something a little bit why I find this so important. So in our country right now, we have power, and we give power to the neighboring states. So everything's under contract. But at the moment, we've had so many different changes in our country. Nobody has maintained our power stations and our electricity in our own country. So we have something called load shedding. For the last 2-3 weeks, we've had to monitor it because I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to train, because they cut our power for 4 to 6 hours at a time, and then they give it to you for 2-3 hours, and then they cut it. Okay. We have the ability to have renewable energy, but due to politics, it's not happening. We have, and they won't let, because the power is owned by the government, they don't want it to be privatized. So it is a terrible situation that we're in. And this is where, when you talk about something like renewable energy, it could be solving our problem right now, but it's not solving our problem because of politics. So I think you can understand why sustainability, when you live in different countries, we shouldn't be in this mess, but we are. And now, and then what happens is we end up with because of the length of our load shedding, it means that we ended up for 2 weeks with little to no internet connections, because all the backup batteries don't get enough time to basically charge, so that the towers for the internet and the phones. All right, so we've just lived through that for the last month. And I think the understanding of, I just wanted to give you a little bit of why these things make such a big difference if they're used successfully. That's besides all the CO2 emittance, that's besides all of those things that affect the earth. So a few years ago, it was water. Today, it's power. And you know what? We shouldn't be in this mess because we are a very resourceful country. But we will get there slowly but surely, because I'm not going anywhere. So let me show you a video. Okay, as I said to you yesterday, if you find a better video that's more suited, you're more than welcome to replace them. But at least you have a starting point, or if you find something that's more relevant to your countries, all our countries have different needs and desires, or have different stories to tell. So use them, don't use them, but use something like them. Okay. Right, let's go
I have
on.
a question.
Yes, of
I don't
course.
know if you were about to say or not. So that video is obviously about renewable energy. So is that stating that Alter Ego are using renewable energy, or how does it
Yes.
link? Because last night it
We
linked
do.
with the plastic.
Yes. So
Yeah.
it's one, if you go through our company portfolio, we do use renewable energy. And what we do is, if we do not use everything that's renewable, we have to compensate for CO2 emissions. Now, what if we compensate for CO2 emissions? What that means is we plant trees. So you plant trees in, normally what we would do is like go to a more rural area in the world that may be suffering, and plant or give seeds for things like fruit trees, so that the kids on the way to school, it's free to pick fruit. Everything has to be linked. So it was actually a very good question. Yes, we use renewable energy, but you must remember, sometimes you've got a truck. Is it a green truck? If it's not a green truck, the CO2 emissions have to be compensated for. So we can't claim anything like that. That's why the first thing is, let me just go back. This is our stance on environmental sustainability. And we try to source as much as we can from the sun, wind, water, and land. And we use the window glass insulation and ventilation systems. So we already doing. I can't place something and claim unless it's part of what. Now you must remember, you've got Alter Ego, but then you've got Petanon, and then you've got your AG88 holding, is it AG8, right? So if you look at that, it's a big umbrella. It's a very, very, very big company that we work for, just one brand in the bigger picture. And we have 3 factories. Now, when we make a claim like this, because one of our biggest projects at the moment is being a water ambassador, okay? And being a water ambassador means that we reduce the amount of water we use for rinsing of shampoo. So every time somebody uses an Alter Ego shampoo, their rinsing time is reduced by about 30 seconds. 30 seconds doesn't sound a lot until you work out how many bottles of shampoo we sell worldwide, how many times they shampoo their hair from one bottle times 30 seconds. We try to make sure that our tints shampoo out easily. We try and make sure that our conditioners rinse out easily, because all of that reduces the amount of time we are using water that could be drinkable. So that's when I said to you yesterday, we really on a big journey, but the water ambassador we've taken on as the whole holding, not only Alter Ego. It's all our brands within Petanon, within the company as a whole. So we are working. I know when I got interviewed, that was one of my first questions that I actually asked, is where we at with sustainability, because I came from a brand that claims to be very sustainable. And the point was, clients that know me, I've been preaching how important sustainability is, and I couldn't backtrack, because I can't now say, yesterday, sustainability, everything was about sustainability. Tomorrow, oh no, sustainability doesn't matter. And for me, credibility means that you stay with what your ethics are. And Afsun, who is the COO, when she interviewed me, it was one of the first questions, and she said, I don't claim to be as sustainable as the brand you came from, but we are chasing it, sustainability, because it's one of their most important drives at the moment. A little bit more, actually, this is a very good time for me to tell you, is the amount of work they do with looking after women in this company. Because what is important to Petanon as a brand is that women are supported. So they support women and child shelters. When it comes to disabilities, I'm talking about now in Italy, and it's for us as in different countries, maybe to take example from what the company is doing. One of our other brands within Petanon, they are making sure there's gender equality, irrespective of your choices in life. So that is what they look after autism, kids with disabilities. That if you look at the big picture, it's not just about environment, it's about people. And I think that is a beautiful story in itself. I did a whole thing about this in the last training. I'm busy doing something about the company at the moment, also for the trainers, because I feel that it has to come with emotion. For me, too many women are abused, and here our company stands for women and female equality. And at the same time, they are looking after women and children and safety houses, and they do charitable work and collect clothes and support charities. So for me, it's a fuzzy place. But at the same time, I wanted all that fuzziness plus a product that worked. So I didn't ask for much. And I was very happy with the way our company's going and the amount of commitment to it, because every meeting that we're in, you see the products. There's always mention now of more sustainability. As they're evolving, you will see it continues that way. So I'll give you an example. In the R&D, that's research and development, they've actually got a water meter that they test when rinsing the shampoo out to make sure we're in line with what we're saying. So how do we make the shampoo able to rinse out in less time? Everything is tested, and it's measured with each shampoo. And obviously, think about how quickly Fast 10 comes out of the hair.
Is that why the shampoo's more running?
I have lots of questions about that, but that is going to be the viscosity. I find I've had questions because I'm busy putting that together, and I will give you proper answers as soon as I'm finished with that story. So I have an answer for you from yesterday. I've got it from you. I will type it up. So Laura explained to me that vegan friendly means that the product within the container is vegan, but sometimes the container is not completely 100% vegan. So vegan friendly, I said, so what's the difference between vegan and vegan friendly? I will give it to you. I'll screenshot her answer and send it to you guys. So the difference was in the certification of whether the product and the whole concept of the container and everything was vegan. So at least, I do go back and ask your questions. Right. Are you happy with my whole environmental sustainability talk?
Thank you.
It's something very close to and dear to my heart. So I'm very passionate about all of this. And I've got a wonderful video that if we've got time, I would like to share with you. It tells you, it's one of the actors that does a whole thing, but it's too long for our clients, but it creates an emotion for my trainers, because I believe the trainers, if they have no emotion about this, it's just another thing. So you can hear from me, I talk from here because I understand it, but do a little research. It will be actually shocking if you actually understand why sustainability is so important. Okay, so Technofruit for me, it will always be my go-to, because when I was young, we only had an ammonia color and we didn't have all the extra luxuries of all these different kinds of brands. But your easiest go-to product out of all of them will always be Technofruit. And as I said, fast on its backside is Fast Color 10 when it comes to root touch, because they're both ammonia colors. And ammonia was your traditional hair coloring system. I remember when the first Mia kind of product was launched by another brand, I was there through the transitioning, and always been given the option between the two. I use an ammonia free color for a specific use. Let's just remember the difference is, if you're looking at an ammonia free cup product, it's got Mia, and as soon as you've got Mia, it takes longer, which means it's always got more pigment. And if it's got more pigment, it means that an ammonia-free color could go slightly darker if you leave it on for a longer period of time, versus a ammonia product that doesn't really do that very much. It only can go slightly darker. So today, I know some of the countries still have some of the old shades, which I also do, and I'm nurturing them, because we have so much dark hair, a lot of the darker shades were taken away. And I was, oh no, like the 5 ones I love. But you know what? We have to sell what makes sense. And it's divided into 28 color groups. You've got your extra reds and your extra lifts, which is your 11 series in Technofruit. And you've got natural and deep natural shades. And all of this I will be explaining along the presentation. All right, what are the key benefits of using Technofruit? You want improved color hold. Let me just plug this in. Because what is the main complaints when people use color is the fact that longevity becomes a huge story. And I'm sure you all agree with that. People today, they want a color that doesn't fade out, and they want improved color hold. Now, I believe that if you use the product correctly, you will get your improved color hold. And if your porosity of your hair and the clients are using the correct products, they will extend the value and the longevity of the color. We get all the clients, because remember, I've only been in market with this for myself for a year. The clients all tell me about the cosmetic effect. They feel it's really great, and they all like the shine of the hair because the hair is glossy. And I like to, sometimes I can be quite cheeky. I will take a test block out and the product they're using, I'll match it up, and I'll leave a little test block so they can see the difference. Why would I do something cheeky like that because when somebody tells me their color is brilliant and I know I can get a better result, by the time you've done the end result, the client's already telling you, but it looks like my previous color in the meantime, because they've already forgotten. Don't forget the element of using also photographs so they can see the before and the after, because they're very sharp to tell you, but it looks the same, but it really doesn't. If you adapt, you can get your 100% gray coverage. I look a lot at formulation, and the only time that I don't always get 100% gray coverage would be incorrect application, or if you look at it a little bit further, it would be the fact that we could tweak the formulation, and by tweaking the formulation, you get your 100% coverage. I think our colors are precise and reliable. I really do believe that. We spoke about PPD free yesterday. Very little irritation is something else that clients have spoken to me about. They love the fact that the scalp is very comfortable during the application. It doesn't create much of an itch or any kind of reaction for the most. And the texture is easy to mix. I've worked with products that you really have to work really hard at getting the different colors in the bowl to mix together to get the activator in. Are there any questions? Because these are your key benefits. And it's really important when you're busy talking to the client, just to remind yourself why we're there. And these kind of key benefits should be mentioned because they're not nonsense. They actually are on point. Just remember, if you have any questions.
I think also we need to mention that the smell, it actually is very comfortable. It might go on a 6-point optimal comfort during application. So just maybe on this point, we can mention the actual smell comparing to other brands.
I can go back and save this and then add it. Right. Yeah, it is. It isn't a very harsh smelling product.
Yeah, the clients love it anyway.
Yeah. I was very surprised when I tested it. And I found that the longevity is really, really, really good. And even the toners, if they're used correctly, they really are pretty fantastic. Okay, so I've got this like really long video that I've cropped and cropped and cropped, but the Garcinia mangostano or mangosteen is a powerful antioxidant. And we spoke about antioxidants yesterday. I'm just going back there because I said to you, it helps affect external oxidation. So if you're looking at your hair shaft, it protects the external. And what did I say? It means that the colors are going to last longer, and it guarantees the anti-aging along the hair shaft. So it's more intense and it's a longer lasting color result. I've really tried to take out all the unnecessary writing. It's all in the notes, because what do you want your client to know? It prevents the oxidation. It gives you intense color, longer lasting color result, and it doesn't allow the oxidation along the hair shaft. And I said, you need antioxidants to protect hair from free radicals, just like you need antioxidants on your face. Remember, your scalp is an extension of your skin. It all comes together as to why this would become very popular and very important. Which of our clients wouldn't go into a beauty shop and make sure that their face cream has an antioxidant? They would be looking for one. Okay, so this is just a little bit to tell you what a mangosteen looks like, and you'll be pretty amazed to see all its health benefits, and it will make a lot of sense why we actually use this in our product. Okay. It is actually much longer than that. But I didn't know where to cut it off because I wanted for everybody to see the anti-inflammatory, because we say that there's very little irritation to the scalp, but you've got a product that has a natural anti-inflammatory in it. It's full of antioxidants. It's full of all the good things. And I think that that is really important when the client knows the benefits. You can shorten that video, but I wanted you guys to see that it's, because often we just talk about a active ingredient, right? And what does the client really know about that active ingredient? We say, wow, it's special. But when I was researching mangosteen, I found this and I was like, oh my word, I should actually be covered in mangosteen because I would be very healthy at the end of this. Right, so now we look at the formula. I'm just going to make you guys smaller for a second.
Where does it grow, the mangosteen?
Pardon?
In which country it grows, mangosteen? Do you know?
I think
Where can we buy it? Where can we peel it from the tree and eat it?
Yeah, because I
Asia.
felt like that is wrong. It is. I know it is
Asia.
in Asia.
Asia?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is like really sad because after looking at that, I felt like I really needed some. Right. So now we look at the formula and we look at the action along the hair shaft. Okay, so I struggle to draw with this pen, but it's better than no picture. So we've got to look at external action, and then we have to look at internal action. And I like to start with internal action, because if we start with external action, we've already closed everything off. Now, what do we need? We need keratin proteins. Okay, and what we've also got to realize is keratin proteins can be hydrolyzed, where they are smaller, or they could have a bigger kind of a molecule. So what you need is, we need to restructure and repair on the inside of the hair and regenerate the inner fiber. Because when we color, we are working with permanent color, we are working on the inside. And we need to always make sure that the integrity of the cortex is there, because if there is no integrity of the cortex, we can't protect the color. And at the same time, our keratin, so you've got the small keratin that can move in and work inside of the cortex. And then you've got your bigger keratins, and they would work on the external, making sure they fill any of the gaps leading into the cortex. But besides that, we also need emollients and a film that will coat the whole external hair shaft. So in a nutshell, we have an internal action. The internal action works on the inside. We were talking about keratin proteins. We have two different sizes of keratin. We have the hydrolyzed smaller one versus the bigger molecule. Now, we need the smaller one to penetrate into the hair and basically protect the cortex and ensure that we can have a really good integrity that's going to protect our color. But we also know that when we're working with an ammonia color, we're opening up that cuticle, and any chips along here, we have our wonderful bigger keratin molecule that will seal it off. And once and for all, we have got our cottonseed and honey, which are emollients that seal everything thereafter. So if I draw this like this, you've got maybe little mouths along here, and then the big keratin molecule will sit inside of that. Does that make sense to everyone? And I like drawing pictures, because even if you talk about this and there's like 3 little words, okay, so we've got different keratin molecules, and you go da 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 da. So if you show them a picture, immediately hydrolyzed is a small molecule. Immediately your normal keratin is a bigger molecule. And if you draw on the hair shaft and you show them there's chips, but we need the little ones to go in to fix up in the cortex to hold our color, because that's where our color happens. And then you need any chipping and any deterioration of the cortex, you need it filled with the bigger keratin molecule, and then your external action is to smooth everything, and you've got a film protecting action. Do you like the way it's explained, and do you like the pictures? Because to stand there and not make something visual is very difficult for your client. It's very different, because you talk about hydrolyzed. A lot of people don't understand what hydrolyzed keratin is. So it's broken down into a small molecule. Draw the picture. Once you've drawn the picture, somebody will understand what you're talking about.
It's always nice to have some pictures on the side. It breaks the text, it breaks the listening, so you go into different visual, so they understand it better.
Yes.
I like the way it's presented.
Yes, so I'm drawing on the screen to give you an idea of what I would be doing on the flip chart, because remember the way people learn. Everything I do, I consider whether you listen, whether you read, or whether you need an action. When you're drawing it, you're creating an action, and you're basically repeating what you've already taught in a different way. And some people will get it first time, but others don't. So instead of making them uncomfortable by asking, did you understand? You automatically go into a backup mode of explaining something like that. Don't take for granted that everybody understands the first time you explain something. And I believe in repetition, because repetition is very important. So I know everyone that's here today was with me yesterday. Your paraphenyldiamine was the original color molecule that was widely used worldwide. And I always remind people that your tattoo, they are still using it up till today. The big problem was they found and they thought that PPD was carcinogenic, which means that they thought it was cancer forming. And all the brands had to go out and try and satisfy the end consumer. PPD was phenomenal for all the years that we've used it. Also, to recap, I said some colors used both. Some colors only use PPD. Some colors started using PTD. And you will find that the coloring of the two molecules are very different. And I don't want to name brand somebody, but a very, very good color brand. And the only thing that I can think that has changed is they used to use PPD and PTD. And this brand out there at the moment that has always been known for exceptional gray coverage and bright reds is struggling now with gray coverage for the first time in my market. And it's very surprising. But they've changed their whole technology, and their technology has gone to PTD. Now, what does that tell you? We've been on PTD for a long time, and we've already adapted all our formulations. So some of the bigger companies were behind, and I've never seen client after client that I go into that all complain about the same thing. And this was me. It can't be. It can't be, because I work for that brand and I know their gray coverage is phenomenal, but they're struggling with it now. And that is actually a wonderful opportunity for us when their new technology isn't working as well as it used to. And they are telling their clients, this is very good information for you as trainers, that they change the formulation so that the gray can wash out, so that the clients can come in more frequently. But their whole life, they have sold on its ability to give 100% gray coverage. So I said, because these clients know me, I've worked for that brand too for many, many years. So how do you change your whole philosophy to something like that? and I can never I will never badmouth any brand. I only worked for 2 before here. One sustainable, one known for its very good coloring. And I find that those 2 brands met for me in the middle with Alter Ego. So I found my home. Right, so now you look at your keratin delivery system. And when I spoke to you, I said to you that you've got your keratins and your proteins. And we already drew our picture. If we had our little gaps along the hair structure, the big protein is going to sit inside there, and our little one is going to penetrate inside. And make sure that we get maximum hold, because if there is no structural damage, it means that our color can last. We always need nourishing oils, because nourishing oils make sure that the hair silks and is smooth at the basin. And I have spent a lot of time on why antioxidant power is very important. So what have we done? We have the proteins and the keratins that protect the hair structure from the inside and the out. Then we have an action along the hair shaft that makes sure that it's smooth, nourished, moisturized, and ensures that we have strong elasticity. And then we've got our antioxidant power that ensures that the free radicals do not affect and age our actual strands of hair. So that just brings it all together in a nutshell. And all the extra talking points was, as I said, in your notes. Right. We have to do the numbering system because Technofruit is basically the same numbering system across all the brands. And this is, for me, one of the strengths, is the fact that we can use one activator, whether it's Fast Color 10, whether it's My Color, whether it's Technofruit. That is a very strong selling point as well, because with some brands, you have to have a different activator. If you're working with an ammonia-free, you need a different activator. If you're working with an ammonia color, you need a different activator. If you're working with a fast 7, 10, 12, whatever minutes color they have. And you need, sometimes we only have one extra special activator, and that's for scalp application with our bleachers. That is also a really good, strong selling point. Once you've bought our activators, you can use it for everything, which means that it's easier to start growing other brands into the salon. Just remember, I'm training you as trainers, not as a client, because for me, it's important on knowing how to use the leverage, because some are new trainers and some have been in training for a long time. Right. So when this can also be done on the flip chart or however you choose, depth versus after the slash tone. So depth is how light or dark the color is. Your primary tone would always be the one, primary meaning first, that will have more pigment than your secondary tone. Why can we not give you exactly the amounts? Is because they are carefully calibrated, and each and every individual tube of tint is calibrated to ensure maximum performance. So can somebody tell you it is 50% depth, 30%, some say 35, some say 30, some say 2-to-1, but it's not an exact science. And I keep on saying, when you have your scientist that's overseeing your education with the hairdresser, that she likes to keep it clean. If you cannot say it's 2-to-1 for every tube of tint, we do not write that down because it's not exact, which means we are not telling our clients the truth. If, as I said also, if I'm going to create a color for myself, because I love on my lighter shades creating my own toners by looking at it, do I need more blue or do I need more violet, and creating my own toner. I work on the proportions of primary versus secondary, sometimes 2:1, which is not a science, but that's for me for mixing color, so that I know the proportions that I'm wanting to work with. So that also changes depending on what I'm trying to achieve. Okay, and I know the clients always ask me, so what is the ratio between primary and secondary? We don't give it. It's not an exact science. Okay. Did you give it before? No. Okay, I'll ask these questions genuinely, because sometimes you tell me there were things that, and I've learned this, there were things that were trained that are very different now. And I get asked a lot of questions. Okay, so this comes with a whole lot of debating as well. A comma, a /0. A /0, we will say, is more neutral. But in fact, it's slightly cool. It's not warm. Why would we say it's more neutral? Not to confuse the client, because the client, if they're going to use a warm shade, should be using a stroke 0. Okay. Your stroke 00 is blue-gray. Any comments? Green.
You're saying that the 00 is a cooler color, and the
Yeah.
1 and the 10 is a warmer color or more neutral.
It's more neutral, but if you test it in reality, I wanted to say pastel blue, but pastel blue would have confused our clients. So it's more neutral, but I will tell you that it's more neutral, but it still sits slightly to the cool side.
Okay.
So if you were going to mix to cover gray and you wanted a copper, you should rather use your comma 0, because your comma 0 is not going to be playing, because
Yes.
blue-gray is very cool. And then you get asked afterwards, why did the copper come out less cool? It's going to come out less cool because you're adding it to a blue-gray intensive natural. I'm going to spend more time on this now, because yeah. And I know that because when I started, I was told this is warm. And then I started doing demos, and it was definitely not warm, because people could cool out the mid-lengths and ends with the stroke 0. And that's when I went on my fishing expedition, because your eye doesn't lie. When you put a color on and it's neutralizing, but not too much, it just gives you a beautiful, clean result. That means it's got to be slightly cool, because it didn't go warm. It didn't go warm, and it was put on a warmer base, but it came out beautiful and neutral. So that is when I asked the questions that I did. And yeah, this is the good thing, because we now know what to expect. This is a natural 4 because the first one is a 0. And then you have your intense reflex when your primary and your secondary are intensive. I had the tertiary color because I know that there is, on some of them, it will be 6,666. This one will be the first one that you lose, because what it's doing is supporting the other two, and they wanted it taken out of the education. So we do not train the primary, secondary, tertiary numbers anymore. We only go primary, secondary. Okay, which makes me wonder if something's coming, because you know what, when I first was in, and then I got told, no, take them out. I said, okay, because we didn't want to have to do back and forth with the education slides, because once they're done, it's better to have them right from the beginning when they're sent out than every month I have to change something in them. So I thought the logic is good. Okay, so I love this picture. And the reason I love this picture is because it makes things so visual. Now, if you look at your comma O versus your comma OO, you can see your comma OO is deeper. And the reason for that is it has, I said it's cool, which means it has more reflective pigment. Does that make sense? Whereas your comma O doesn't have more reflective pigment. Or let's not say more extra. Okay, so this was something that I had to make sure that I also understood. So your comma O can cover gray equally as your comma OO. The reason the comma OO is deeper is because of the cool reflective pigment that makes it a cool natural. When you look at your comma O, the depth is the same as the comma OO, but it doesn't have the extra reflective pigment. Does anybody have a question before I go on? No questions.
So you mean that if it's 100% gray, with one or another, you cover it 100% anyway?
Yes.
Or maybe for a resistant gray, you would use a rather OO.
I will give you those formulas because I rather change mixing ratio. Because the first question, the reason I speak about this a lot is because people come from different brands, okay? And some of the brands will tell you a comma OO means that it's got more pigment to cover, right? And it has more ammonia. Now, in ours, a comma OO means that we have the coverage in the comma OO and the comma O. The reason it goes darker is because I said that it is a blue-gray. Blue is your most intensive pigment, which means that if you're going to use blue in a color, it gives you automatically depth. Any color that has blue in goes darker. So look at your comma 1 and look at your comma 1, 1. A comma 1, do you see, is more of a pastel blue. And when we have it using a comma 1, 1, why does the color go darker? It's because it has a primary and a secondary blue. So often when, well, not often, every time I train, if a client wants the color to be a 7,1, they want to get a 7 level ash shade, I would tell them to use an 8,1, 1, because the 8,1, 1 is going to end up on a 7 level, because look how intensive the blue is. Blue goes darker. And blue is not a reflective color. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
So for the hello. So for reds and coppers, it's better if we use the O instead of the double O.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
does it make sense now? Why?
Yeah.
And you can see that this is why I like the picture value, because when you look at the picture, it actually makes it visual so people understand. Now, the theory of color tells you yellow makes lighter and brighter, and more reflective. So any color that has yellow in it will be lighter, brighter, more reflective. Any color that's going to go darker is going to have blue in it. Because remember, you've got 3 primary colors. And blue is your most intensive pigment. And as long as you're adding blue, the color will be more intensive. Okay. And let's go on with the picture. I'm just going to cut your faces all out again for a second. So what I also like about this is your color, we will tell you, warmer shades can appear up to half a shade lighter. What's important about that is because yellow, I said, is more reflective. And it will give you the feeling of the lightness. Now your 3-2, can you see? It comes out more like beigey sandy versus your 3-1. So you because it's got blue in it, again, it is more flat. And then just to show you your 7 is more on the warm side. Your 7-2, it's warm with violet. And your 7-1, because of the blue, is moving more to the cool side. Can I ask you, do you have any questions about this picture? There's so much that can be taught from this picture in numbers and understanding what they can do. Because when color goes wrong, it's normally because we haven't taken into consideration how pigment works. And secondly, we haven't thought about what we need to do. So if we're going to put a 7 on a warm shade, a 7 is going to be warmer. If there's a lot of orange in the hair, I'm going to use the 7-1. That will give me just a slightly cooler version of 7 because it can neutralize the unwanted pigment. The 7-2 I would use because I love the velvet feeling of it, but it can also cool down any of the yellow pigment in it. If you feel that you're sitting with yellow and blue, I would mix 7-1 and 7-2. Because then I know that I'm neutralizing more of the unwanted tones. Okay. So what I did was I collected all the...
Francine, I think one is missing 1-7.
Yes, I know. This was done. This was originally done by Petanon, and I took it and it was done before the 1-7 was in. So what I think I should do is I'll have graphics try and put a 1-7 in. I know there's no 1-7.
Cool.
But I liked the imagery because I thought it was like really easy for people to identify what we were talking about. Because you can do a whole lesson on a picture visually. Okay. Right, your color wheel. Now, the one thing I recommend that you do is you blow this color wheel up. And I have, you were at my last training. What I did is I put it on the table because the answer should always be on your color wheel. Your color wheel is there as your ultimate tool. You need to know what your undertones are. You need to know what your numbering system is. And this was, when I designed it, it was made so that it helps people if you put it in the kitchen. So using this as a tool, I've got this one now, just for your information. Some people didn't like the white. So there's a black version and a white version for you to choose which one you like. I find when I blow it up, the white is more easy to see on the darker shades. But some people didn't like the fact that it was half white, half black. And it came from, when I spoke to them originally about it, the graphic designer said, it's better this way, okay? So now you have 2 versions. You can choose which you feel is better. When this is blown up, the white really pops easily to see, but see for yourself. So I make them A1 because you really want an A1 when you use the color wheel. And the lesson here is how to use it and how to explain it. So on your table, you should have a techno fruit color chart, and you should have your big color wheel. And what I do is I work with the swatches on the big color wheel so that they can actually understand what we are trying to say. So the first thing that I do, and this is also nice because I actually have time to explain it properly. When we're in Italy, I'm on this very, very quick time slot and I've got to run away with everything, is look in the middle of this color wheel. Do you see you've got black in the middle over here, right? Now, what I wanted the clients to be able to understand is we have undertones. And when we have undertones, the client has to understand what an undertone is. And most of the time they forget. So a number goes 1, then it goes 3, then it goes 4, then it goes 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 9 is somewhere here. And then we've got 10. But what is the undertone of these colors? So if you go and you're on a 7, and we're working in this segment, it will tell you that your undertone on a 7 level is orange. If you're working on a 5 and you're working on this segment, it will show you that your undertone, your natural hair undertone, is if we're lightening it and we want red, we are on a 5. Okay, does that all make sense so far? Anybody? Okay, let me put on your pictures. Does that all make sense? What the natural undertone is?
Yes,
so all the client, if it's big, all they have to do is go in that pie and it tells them, I want, and the client wants red. Okay, what's going to support red? A red undertone. And that means you are on a level 5. If the client wants orange, we will be lightening to a 7 because the hair's natural undertone on a 7 is orange. So this not only helps you choose a color, it actually helps you with your lightening to know where you're at when you are lightening.
And when to stop.
And where to stop on palest yellow, right? Then what if you look at it, over here is your double 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000. I've just explained to everyone that that natural is blue-gray. So it's going to sit in the blue segment. And why is it in the center? Because they're classified as more natural colors. If you put that in here, it creates more confusion. If I take this and I put it here, it's going to create confusion. Do you agree with me? So your more natural colors are all where they should be. Then I said a 7 is warm. Oh, what did I do there? I didn't even know I could move that with a pen. What did I do? Okay, here we go. Sorry. So the clients, you see, they can do this themselves while you're explaining it. We said 7 is warm, so it falls under your golds. Then we said the 7.2 was had a violet base, so it comes under, because the 2 is a natural brown with violet. The 7.1 is going to be a natural brown, here they are, with blue in it. And then he spoke about the 1.7s. The 1.7 is it's still got the brown in it, but its primary is blue. So you would move it out of the more naturals and put it up in the blue segment, right? If you look at these, you will see the 10.1 sits on top of the 10.1.1. Why? Because the 10.1.1 can move, it's sitting on the verge of being a 9. Do you see how much learning you can do from your color wheel? Then The other thing I like to do is I take, if you've got a big one, you've got 10-3, 10-3-2, 10-3-1, right? Put it onto the yellow of your color wheel, and you get them to place the swatches all the way around the color wheel. And you will see that if you put warm on warm, it's going to go warmer. If you put the 10-3-1 on the warm, you see it goes more sandy. And if you go to this one, it becomes, oh, I love the 3-2s, especially for toning. It actually shows up because the yellow, which is the undertone, is shining through on the shades. And they have an idea of what you're talking about when you're talking about undertones, because you can actually see what it happens and why you have the different color choices. So what do you think of the way we can use this for training?
It's fabulous. Wonderful. Wonderful, Francine.
I really tried hard because I believe that a training tool.
Great, how you explained it is very good.
Yes, and it works like a dream, because when we get to masters, we're going to play with the fact that I'm not putting. I'm going to give you blank. I'm going to give them blank color wheels, and do activities where they must learn to place their numbers. The other thing you will find, just another way of using this color wheel, is for neutralizing. Obviously, we know the opposites neutralize. But for instance, if you want to neutralize here, they will learn that it goes 1 to 10, and they can just move it around, and the answer's on the color wheel. You can use it that way as well. They can take their finger, and I'm not being, I play it down in a salon because most people don't know their color wheel and they don't understand it. So I'll go, when your juniors are learning, this is the perfect tool because they can take their finger and they can basically move it around the color wheel, and then nobody's intimidated, because I guarantee you they don't know their color wheel and they don't know what neutralizes what, and they still ask you why the color go, if you put blue on yellow, why it goes green. So the answer's on the color wheel, and use it. It really, really works. And the funniest thing was, you create a tool, and I created everything except thinking about putting the 10-3 on the swatch. And I was playing with it when I was training, and I was like, oh my word, if you put the swatch on the warmth, or you put the cooler swatch on the same warmth, the warmth is actually reflecting through, and the answer is even more visual. So you create something, and then you find more benefits to it as you go along. Use it, I promise you, it makes the world of difference. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the video
It's normal
there
that we
because-
didn't have a sound on the video, on any of the
Oh
videos
my-
that you,
there's no sound.
no.
Okay,
I think it's
Right.
because the Zoom, maybe it's too, and it's how to say, it's jams
okay, let
all
me
the
just
time.
go share sound. Okay, I will try.
I don't know, maybe or it's
deep-
just me, but in any of video presentation, I didn't hear the sound.
Okay, I will definitely check what settings wrong. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to grab a cup of coffee because we've done the color, the inspiration,
Good.
and I'm going to give everybody little short breaks rather because I do understand it's very late in some countries, and I think you need your coffee to keep you awake. All right, see you in 10. I'm back if everybody's here.
And we are back.
You're back, right? I only see a few people on the screen that have their screens on, so I hope we can one day get to the situation where everyone puts on their cameras and talks to us a bit more. I think people that know me or I've trained more are more happy to switch their cameras on. But just remember, it's easier for me to actually monitor you as well and make sure you're comfortable if I see your faces. So I work on the faces that are on the screen as to know whether you're happy or unhappy with what has been trained. Makes my life much easier. And please remember to ask questions. Okay.
Okay. Sometimes I switch off my camera because of bad connection. It's just
No.
It's easier.
No, it's just like if I've got some faces, then I just like know if I should like do something else or explain it in a different way. It just gives me some kind of direction. I think the worst thing about Zoom training is it's really difficult to establish a relationship if all the cameras are off. And then I was in Italy and somebody said to me, "Hello, how are you?" And I'm, "Okay, who are you? Why?" Because I've never seen your face, but I've trained you. And it's like, yeah, but it does get much easier as time goes on. All right, so if we look at this, we did do it as well yesterday, but just to recap it, once you've mixed your color and your activator in the bowl, the first thing you do is you need some kind of an ammonia kind of product or an alkalizer so we can, oh, why did it do that? Sorry. No, where we going? Yeah. So that we can open the cuticle, right? Once we've swollen and opened the cuticle, that means that our color precursors can actually start penetrating into the cortex. Once it's gone into the cortex, the first action, and we've got to remember that using the right coactivator is very important. It allows, if we've used a higher activator, for the lightening of the natural melanin and then the color development, where your color molecules become oxidized and they become bigger molecules. So if you look in the inside over here, you will see some of them are much smaller, and the bigger ones are the molecules that have oxidized. And once they've only oxidized, once your lightening, your deposit and oxidation has occurred, will you only be able to get your final color end result. Now, what we need to know is in Technofruit, our alkali that we use is ammonia. And these are the percentages. So in dark hair, your percentage is 2%, your medium shades 2.5, and your lighter shades are 2.8. And your SS shades are 3.8. Now, up till today, I have clients, as much as I disagree with them, they like to use the super lighteners for toning. Now, you've lightened hair. Why do we want to go with the highest ammonia level to tone the hair? For me, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And we are fortunate in our, the way I see this is if you go back to your color wheel, we have freestanding blue, we have freestanding violet, we have, if you think that the color's too strong, you have white booster that can soften your toner. You have a blue 10 double O, which
White
means,
booster, you mean neutral?
yes, neutral.
Okay.
So if you put neutral to it, it softens the action, which means that you've got a longer time to tone than if you have it at a toner that's so strong that in the fine areas, you're going to pick up the undertones. So I recommend, I hate the word but if you want a toner to last, I prefer the toner on longer, because if the toner is on longer, you've got more oxidation of color, which means it doesn't shampoo out as quickly. And that should make sense because you've oxidized more color molecules. And you must remember we're working with low volumes, and we're working with lower volumes to ensure that we don't overload the hair as well. And we spoke quite a bit about this yesterday, we don't have root flare. I would rather soften my toner and have a longer development time than have a toner on for 3 minutes, because it's incorrect application, incorrect choice, incorrect level, and then we end up with problems.
So
My
what do you mean
recommendation,
softening your toner
you're
is putting neutral and using low volume?
if I could rather go then with a higher volume and oxidize more color, but the pigment isn't as strong, so it's not grabbing all the way along on the very porous areas. Do you agree with me?
Yeah. And maybe it will be in the future, but the boosters, they're like neutrals, blues, and violets. Do they have ammonia?
They have Mia, yeah, but
And
they've
in
been
this,
designed to work.
in this page, in this, where does it stand? Or it's not? Light and fashion
Diamond.
shades or no?
Okay, so the booster has Mia, and it is classified with the Mia colors in the amount of ammonia. Just remember that the lighter the shade, the higher the ammonia. The lower the shade, the less ammonia you need. And that is why I would rather be working with a 2.8 than working with a 3.8 ammonia level. Another interesting fact, let me go back to my color wheel. People like to use these, okay, the 11 and the 12 series. When you're working with your 11 and your 12 series, we have less pigment, more ammonia. So why are they choosing maybe the 11 series? Is because it is maybe not as pigmented as your 10 series. So what can we do to stop them from doing that is introduce neutral, because it softens it.
This is what I do a lot. And yeah like 50% of neutral sometimes.
Yes. And it's the reason, you know this, but these are things that maybe our clients aren't understanding. And they, especially on the really dark hair, they like to use the 11 and the 12 series. And this is why I tell them they shouldn't be, rather soften. And I say soften because it's a nice word. You're almost diluting it. It's like putting white paint into a color to make it more pastel. And logically, I understand why they're using it, because it's more pastel, but the ammonia is more damaging on hair, even though it's volatile and it evaporates, but you can create it without having to break the rules. So these are all the nice things about that color wheel, because you can keep on going back to it if it's in front of them, and you can visually show them what you're talking about. So you're going now with the high ammonia and the pastel color. Why not create the pastel color with less ammonia, which is less damaging to the hair? Right, so with our co-activator, we have the 5, which is the emulsion. You have 10, 20, 30, and 40. and they contain hydrogen peroxide, which means it's H2O2, and H2O2 would rather be H2O because that is water, and that is a stable molecule. So all that we're doing, and the reason we're using hydrogen peroxide, is for the release of that extra oxygen molecule, right? Is coactivators stabilized? Yes, they are, because otherwise the bottles would be swelling like this and going to swish. In the old days, and I'm talking about, I've been a hairdresser for many years, people got away with leaving a color on for 20 minutes, and they got longevity. Why? Because the hydrogen peroxide wasn't as stable as it is today. And hydrogen peroxides are now created to have slow release for the whole development time. So your old school, from all the years back, our hairdressers used to take off color earlier, but the peroxide wasn't as stable. So sometimes it could actually do its whole job in 20 minutes. And they wouldn't have the comeback of the color washing out as you would today, because you need the full development time for all the pigment to be oxidized. Because these are the kind of nonsense things we get every day in the training room. Yeah, I watch it and then I take it off. Yes, because the pigment's inside, but it's not all oxidized, so it can wash all the way out again, because the molecule's still small. Not everything got oxidized in the cortex. Those are the most important things here. Now, even your coactivator, because we did the mangosteen, we spoke about it, and we said it's a very good antioxidant. So now we know they're paired together really beautifully, because you've got your mangosteen in your activator, and you've got your mangosteen in the tube of tint, which means you have a beautiful balance of antioxidants to ensure that the hair really stays at optimum when it comes to the aging process. Silk protein is going to always, because the word protein is there, is going to restructure. And it's at the same time, it creates the film that makes sure that the hair doesn't become dehydrated, because our hair isn't really dehydrated once we've used a technofruit color with our coactivator. And I say with our coactivator. What are the key benefits? We need to make sure that the pigment is correctly deposited. So your carrier mass with the consistency of the coactivator, make sure that it can travel into the cortex in the best way possible. We've already spoken about the power of the antioxidant, and it makes sure that the texture is correct to enhance the performance of the service. It allows for our easy application. And the one thing that I will say about the texture of our mixture is that it actually goes really far, because it's really easily spreadable along the hair, and it really makes sure that the coverage is very, very good. Your oxidizing emulsion is your 5. We find the hair healthier, more vibrant, and protected, and it reduces the mixture preparation time. As I said to you, some products you really have to stand and make sure that the two are beautifully blended. Recommendation: if you're using more than one color, we need to discuss with the clients that you mix those colors together first before adding the activator, because that also prevents lumps and some areas more concentrated, especially if you're going to use things like boosters in them and you've got like one little pea size that you've put in and it's not mixed properly into the color. It creates problems along the hair shaft. I know I'm stating some of the obvious, but sometimes the obvious needs to be explained. Okay, so here you will see your new Technofruit color transformer. Why are you doing that? It's right up here and it's less than 1. then you've got your co-activator, and then you've got your Technofruit, your Fast Color 10, and my color. Color transformer, we spoke yesterday about weak acids versus strong acids versus weak alkalis versus strong alkalis. So this is neutral. When you use your color transformer, it's not going to make your mixture acid as the way you might have been trained with your pH changer. It didn't ever make the color acid. What it does is it will reduce the alkalinity by about 1 point. 1 point, which is why it makes it into a demi type color. Not all demis are acid. And sometimes when you're using a demi that is acid, I find that I can struggle with the durability of that because it's so busy sealing the cuticle that sometimes with the lighter shades and the small amount of pigment in lighter shades, I find the longevity of the lighter colors. Sometimes I struggle with the longevity. So reducing it and still leaving it slightly on the alkali side is not a problem because it has reduced the alkalinity enough to give you the demi effect. Okay, so it's not going to make it an acid color, which you were originally taught with pH changer. It drops at about a point, and then so it's a weak acid with your weak coactivator, which means that it doesn't pull this into the acid side. It brings it down only slightly and remains in the alkali side, just a gentler alkali. And remember, I used the big, strong bottle yesterday versus the small little bottle. Some acids are stronger in their formulation. Some alkalis are stronger. So our color is the stronger, which pulls the acid to the alkali side, but reduces it. Any questions on that? I tried to explain it today in a different way so that you grasp it, because sometimes we were trained that your coactivator and your alkali get mixed together and it reduces the pH by so much. It doesn't, because the one is stronger than the other. Okay.
So
any
the way you
questions
use
on how to explain it?
No, the question how to use the transformer. You mix the color and the
First,
and together,
and
you
I've
put
got
color.
that.
Yeah.
I've got the presentation for you on that as well.
All right.
I created one for that too. As I said to you, I'd rather give you the folder with everything in it.
Good.
Right, so you're mixing guidelines. And remember, this is always a guideline. So toning of the lengths and ends, or for powdery effects, it's 1 part to 2 parts, and you can use 5 or 10 volume. And your processing time is up to 20 minutes. Now, what is important here is, when do I recommend 5 vol and when do I recommend 10 vol? That was, again, a very different science for me, because you get more, which this is going to make a lot of sense now, oxidation of color when you're using 10 vol, which means you're going to get a far better and stronger toning effect than when you work with 5 vol. Now, the questions that normally come up when I recommend 10 vol versus 5, if the hair is porous. If the hair is porous, we know that the cuticle is wide open, which means that little molecules can escape really easily. If I use 10 vol, remember, it's the amount of oxygen that's going to be released. It means I have more oxidized pigments. And if I've got more oxidized pigments, I get better longevity. Yes or no? Yes. When you use 5 vol, because there's more, less linking, it means that you have more ammonia being released, all right? And I said to you, a lot of the base shifting is coming from the release of the ammonia. Now, the other thing we've got to make sure we explain really nicely to the client is the volume of peroxide is not what damages the hair, it's oxygen. Oxygen, that free molecule, is there to attach to the color molecule, not to damage hair. Doesn't damage hair. It's not there for damaging hair. And I learned that a long time ago when my own trainers told me, you want me to tone with 10 vol? And I was always taught to tone with 5 vol, and we're going to damage hair. And I said, chemically, how are you going to damage hair with oxygen when the oxygen's there to oxidize the color molecule? Just go back to the science and remember what the science was there about. So when we looking at doing tone on tone, you can use your 10 vol. When you're darkening, you can use your 10 vol. However, I have a caution. If you've got different textures of hair, fine, medium, coarse. If I'm going to use 10 vol, I go more to the fine textured hair. Why would I go more to the fine textured hair? Because I have less color to oxidize in fine textured hair. Do you agree with me? When you look at your coarse textured hair, I would immediately, if I'm doing tonal darkening, I would go to 20 vol. Think about the oxygen means that I've got more color development happening in my coarser textured hair. And if the hair is fine, I could go with 10 or 20. Any questions? And when you talk to me about initial gray hair coverage, I go back to fine, medium, coarse hair. If I'm going to use my 10 volume, I am oxidizing less color, which means I would only recommend the 10 volume back. I go always back to texture of hair. So is it wrong? The clients will tell you, I'd always use the tone on tone darkening initial gray coverage, always use 10 vol. And I say, what does the coarse textured hair look like when she comes back? Do you have fadage? Think about how much you need to oxidize before making the decision. Right, so when we look at our gray hair coverage, you've got 1 to 1.5, and 20 vol will give you normally your precise gray coverage. It will give you 1 level lift, and it can darken and changing tone. You need 20 volume. You cannot change tone with 10 volume, full stop. If the hair is really porous, you should be tinting the mid, lengths, and ends with 20 vol to maximize oxidation of pigment. So here, I'm really careful. In everything, they must understand is it's the oxidation of pigment we are talking about. And that is why we bring in the texture, because we know fine hair can go darker if we're working with 20 vol, right? Whereas if we were working with 10 volt, because of the less oxidation of color, you won't go darker. Now, another talking point when we put this together was the fact that some manufacturers say with 20 vol, you can get 1 to 2 levels of lightening. Yes, you can. 2 on very fine hair. And very fine hair, if it's hot, women with menopause, their body temperature is really raised. So it is a good idea to give them maybe a glass of water before you give them, a cup of coffee. Let's give them a cup of coffee when their body temperature is already sky high. We are using 20 vol and she's got fine texture. yes, you're going to get up to 2 levels of lightening. So what I do is, because I know from my own body heat, I'm not ashamed to say, my body heat today is cool. Yeah, it's cool. It's not going to be cool for long, because you'll actually see, like during the training, my body temperature can go sky high and it can become really hot. So if I'm going to drink a cup of coffee, how much higher do you think my body temperature is going to go versus a glass of water, ice water? Bring the temperature down. Another thing that I learned, and this was something that I learned actually from a company that specializes in relaxers. And they explained to me that if a lady is menstruating, her body temperature also goes up. And that is why you always check body temperature before you do any chemical on the scalp. And you bring the temperature down, because sometimes you will see, but I've used the same formula, and sometimes it's lighter and then it's dark, and it's lighter and it's darker. It was dependent on the lady's body temperature. Interesting fact. When I tone, I give the client also check a body temperature. Keep the water cool when you're rinsing, so that you don't enhance body temperature, which means you're going to get more root flare. We can control this just by doing a few logical things. And then you won't also create the bands along the hair shaft. Why did it lighten more? Why did it not? Why did it? Why didn't it? Oh, your color is inconsistent. No, the lady's body temperature is inconsistent. Okay. So there again, lightening 2 levels became another whole debate, because technically your average is 2. But if the hair is super fine, it could become 3. Do you want, Laura and I were in agreement with this, we're not going to write 2 to 3 levels, because then the client has an expectation that she can get 3 levels of lightening, because she's going to forget about the whole lesson we gave on body temperature versus texture versus everything else. And then the lightening of 3 could become 3 to 4. Your extra lifts, obviously, 11 versus 12 series can give you 4 or 5, but let's stay at the generic. And during the lesson, we can actually say, yes, in these circumstances, you could get the extra amount of lightening, because some of our competitor brands will say 2 to 3, 1 to 2. Rather write it than make it a statement in a chart. Are you happy with that? Right, so now we're going to look at our percentage of white hair, and we state that from 50 to 100, we can add certain amounts of natural. I always say, look at the history of the hair, and how do I check and how do I assess my gray hair and how much coverage I think I'm going to get? All you need to do is look at the bands along the hair shaft, because you will immediately see whether the colors lasted, because often it's somebody else's color that has come in. What and how much fadage did we get? What color was used previously on the hair? And the amount of natural for me is also dependent on how resistant the gray hair is. So when I've got high percentages of gray hair, I tend to automatically put natural in. And I'm quite safe at 1 to 1 with my tones. Unless that hair is super resistant, I might add more natural than reflect, because I don't want screaming hair. Right, so I made this little table for you. And the reason I did this is because we can talk and talk and talk and talk, and sometimes nobody still gets it. So 10 vol, if we're doing gray hair, I would say we're going to only get deposit, and I only guarantee it on fine textured hair. Mixture 1 to 1.5. 20 vol will always remain for the normal gray coverage, 1 to 1.5. And this is where we're pretty safe. As I said to you, I look at the amount of natural that needs to be added versus the percentage of white hair. For resistant gray hair, 1:1, 30 volume. Right, why 30 volume? If we were going to mix it with 20 volume, now we've got more tint in the bowl and less, oh, I'm such a bad drawer, just by the way, less activator. So why am I using 30 volume? I'm using 30 volume so that I am capable of actually oxidizing the greater amount of pigment that's in the bowl. However, if we mix it 1 to 1.5, we can get lightening with 30 volume. And if we mix it 1 to 1.5, we can get 3 levels of lightening. What the client then has to accept is we could have translucency. Translucent. Right? Do you like the table? I think it simplifies everything. And you have, all right, 10 vol instead of that big table. This is just for gray coverage, guys. 10 vol, fine texture, you may get coverage. 20 vol, perfect coverage. 30 vol, resistant gray, 1:1, 30 vol. If the hair's fine and I mix 1:1, I probably will get coverage if I just use 20 vol, because that's also going to become a discussion, because they're going to tell you, yeah, but I mixed it with 20 vol and I still got the coverage. Yes, you'll get the coverage. What is the texture of the hair? So I'll give you an example, because my hair is really, really resistant. So I did half head, because it doesn't help if I put it, the one mixture at the back, straight down the middle. On the one side, I mixed 1:1, 20 volt to test the theory. And on this side, I mixed 1:1 with 30 volt. My hair's fine to medium. When I let it grow out, and then I got a whole lot of hairdressers to put me out in the sun. The one with 20 volt had shifted by about 3/4 of a shade, almost a full shade, where my 30 volt was solid. There was no movement. Now, if my hair had been fine, I would have got away. It tells you already with the 20 volt. And your client might be happy with the end result because they think that's really good compared to what they're getting anywhere else. But if I want it solid and I need to work on resistant coarse hair, I'm going to mix it 1:1 with 30 volt. And I get my end result every time. And just for your information, there is a gray hair formulation experience class, and it gives you tips and tricks and visuals of what happens when you use a double O versus a comma O. I did lots of overlays and understanding of what opaque is versus translucent is. So you've also got all of that. Right. Suggestions for gray coverage. Dab on the root. What does that mean? I'm placing the color on the root. Watch application. They sweep. And then you get your band over here that gets covered in your root that doesn't, because it's always been an action. They sweep. Place, place, place. It gives you more product on that root area, and it's not sweeping it onto the root, off the root area, which means you're getting saturation on the root. Start in the most resistant area, which is often around the hairline. Suggestion. You can now see my gray because I haven't colored it. My hair grows incredibly quickly. This is 2 weeks growth. Tap, tap, bottom up, tap, tap. Why? Tap, tap. I'm compacting. If I start at the top, I shift it. Somebody keeps on shame losing. If I take it off, I shift it as I move up, don't I? When I work from the bottom, tap, tap. It stays concentrated on the root area. Fine sections. Everybody sweeps this back. And when they're sweeping this back, the little coarse hairs, the wire hairs, start shooting up. And if they're shooting up, you're not going to get 100% coverage. Make sure you've put enough product on those resistant areas. And that's where I said working from the bottom up compacts. And what I do is I check after 10 minutes for beading. What that means is you will actually see on the root area, the colors pushing off. Have you ever seen that? It happens with blonde and it happens with gray. It pushes off. Depending on the resistance, I might just mix an extra 5 mils so that I can pat it down. Or if it's not too bad, I just pat it down to help it get into the hair shaft. And I promise you, working like this, my gray coverage is spot on every time. And it's always
either
check
gray
application.
coverage or it's a blonde. With the blonde, it's the same.
Yeah,
Sometimes
especially
just go across.
I go across because you'll actually see it pushing off the root of the freshly keratinized hair. And you will also see that it doesn't push into the hair. So I always cross-check a blonde application, and I always go back to my gray hair after 10 minutes because it will tell me I would rather spend 5 extra minutes and tap it down or mix 5 little grams more. Then the client comes back to me and I have to do a whole new application because the hair was resistant. And this is the way to fix it right then and there. Then when the client comes back and she pushes her hair back and she goes, but look here, it's translucent, I can see.
Instead you start from here and then from up here.
So
if here.
Where's the most resistant area? I've got a picture for you now. It's normally like mine is this band. So
Yeah.
by starting at the bottom, I'm compacting.
So you start from near
bottom,
from here, and then you go up.
And then here, and I go up.
Okay, and you don't
the back,
do like this to.
Yes, and then a big because you're gonna, and then when you do that, it's so compacted. I just tap it down again when I cross check. All right. But it works because then your client can never come back to you and say to you, well, you can't get great coverage with us, because you can get 100% great coverage with us in application and choosing the correct formulation for the correct client. Right. And I think, let me go here quickly. All right. What's going on? All right. So I made this also. We will have little heads on our things. If we're going tone on tone or we're darkening, we can apply root to end. That is virgin application, right? I do not do this application for anything that has a reflective base to it. That's why I go natural. Tone on tone, natural, because tone on tone is natural. If it's red, if it's blonde, if it's anything, we do the traditional application of mid-lengths and ends first, 2 centimeters from the scalp, second application onto the scalp area. I don't wait, because by the time, and I like to start bottom up, because this makes a virgin application so much easier. And by the time you've done this whole side and that whole side, mid-lengths to ends, it's 20 minutes. And then you go straight back to the root and you do the development time, and it all comes off at the same time. However, I use 1 volume, especially if it's red or brightly reflective hair. When it's longer, I use 1 volume higher on the mid-lengths and ends than I do on the root area. Why? Because when you blow dry the hair, yes, it looks all even, but when you lift it up to the light, you always end up with more vibrancy. Yeah. So if I'm using a blonde, or if I'm using a red shade, I would use the target color and say use 30 volt here, same mixture with 20 volt on the root. And you will have the vibrancy and the lightness from root to end, because you don't have the scalp heat on the mid-lengths and ends that bumps it up and makes it brighter and more vibrant. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I normally work like that.
Yeah, that's perfect. but we must remember to tell our clients that.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that's why all the pictures are there, so you can
And
explain it
sometimes they
nicely.
ask, why are you doing this or
Yes. And as I said, this is an introduction class. So I know you might think I'm stating the obvious, but it's not obvious for everyone. Right, so regrowth application, first apply to regrowth, assess mid-lengths and ends. Formulation is dependent on porosity, depth, and the tone. So what we will do here is we will apply it to this, and then we have to assess our mid-lengths and ends. Any questions?
so you said when we start from the routing from here and you go
Just
up.
hang on a second. Let me just open this now. Let me just stop my screen sharing. Let me just go out of this. And I can open you all up nicely. So this is questions and just hang on. Stop share. Right. Let me try and end recording. Because this is our just pause recording.